Chapter 20. Vestiges of a Wraith, Part 1 of 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The field of view slowly advanced forward on the projection within the car, containing within it an undulating and faint swaying gate. The distance to Luo Nan drew closer and closer. Li Xuecheng became more and more mentally engrossed. His hand increased in strength, gripping Lien Yu's hand to the point of causing pain. All the while, his mouth was jabbering on. Jiayu, did you know? I loved playing these real-life games since I was a kid. Virtual reality, sensory immersion, and the like. When compared to this, they're really lacking. This is a game that you truly control. Here there's absolutely no one to interfere, no opposition at all. It doesn't matter how exceptional the target is. At most he can only touch my puppet. He's unable to touch the formless link weaved from money, so he's even further unable to touch me. Looking at their helpless and anxious expression all the way until their thorough defeat, their collapse. There's nothing more amusing than this. Lien Yu's legs were trembling subconsciously. Today Li Xuecheng was too unfamiliar to behold. Previously this fellow was able to quite grasp the meaning of reputation no matter how petty he was. He absolutely wouldn't have been this obsessed with a single person to perform a soliloquy. His entire character was now warped. It seems as though he had been stimulated into becoming mad from the intimidation and loss of consciousness as caused by Luo Nan yesterday. Lien Yu was fully aware that it was fundamentally impossible to communicate with a lunatic. But the problem lied in the expression that Li Xuecheng was displaying. He had the look of incomparable anticipation, he was waiting for her response. Her lips trembled slightly as she thought for quite a while. She managed to squeeze out some words. Wouldn't this activity attract too much attention? If everyone sees that he's ambushed, then the withdrawal period. Li Xuecheng's expression turned tender once more. He caressed Lien Yu's knuckles lightly. Think about it some more, Jiayu. I'm not that stupid. Right now we're just getting a feel for the atmosphere. A good game will certainly have an excellent plot. A simple, rough plot is unacceptable. Come. Let's watch together. Li Xuecheng had somewhat increased the force of his hand while he was talking. At first Lien Yu didn't respond to it, but then her hand was pulled, awakening her. After a slight hesitation, she lifted her but to sit up straight. Li Xuecheng was unable to wait any longer. He pulled her forcefully and she collided into his embrace. Lien Yu let out a low cry, but she was already hugged in Li Xuecheng's entire embrace. Luckily this lunatic's energy wasn't concentrated here. His chin dropped down to her shoulder and their faces stuck together. They continued observing the game, maintaining this intimate position. The car's AI detected that the two people were now sharing the same point of view. It enlarged the size of the projection in a human-like manner. With the first-person view as the main support, with adding and calibrating the immersion function of contact lenses into the mix, the view of the scene was just as if they were there in person. The receiving and recording equipment created a faithful reconstruction of the original environment of the locker room. The buzzing sound waves made Lien Yu become all the more distraught with anxiety. Enrollment in Acumen College started in the 7th grade. They didn't have fixed classrooms, instead they followed the Western style of having an elective course system. Students were like livestock pheasants, they gathered together and dispersed apart randomly. And one of the most crowded and noisy gathering points of these students was the locker room. Every day before class began, a great number of people flowed in and out. Countless rumors, slander, and sexual gossips flew up and down, rumbling like mosquitoes. This was a time when it seemed the clamor would never stop. Near Luo Nan's locker was all students of the same year as Luo Nan. But as groups of people came and went, not a single person called out to say hello to Luo Nan. An invisible man. Li Xuecheng completely controlled his state of mind as he observed Luo Nan's actions. He laughed in delight, soon you'll become famous. Just as mentioned previously, Li Xuecheng wasn't willing to use an electric attack and inject drugs in a public place with several people. This was inconsistent with his expectations. He had to patiently bide his time in order to deal with this fellow. There wasn't just one person acting as a hired puppet for Li Xuecheng. The circle of rich kids was wide and vast, filled with friends. Li Xuecheng didn't care for the price, so the forces he could mobilize were quite significant. Luo Nan finished changing clothes and carried his old clothes to leave, probably to take to the laundry room. As soon as he moved, 4 or 5 people caught up to him in succession from the surrounding chaotic stream of people. A small map was on the upper left corner of the projection, just like that of a typical game. The surrounding structures and rooms were obtained and displayed with the current room. Li Xuecheng's spirits were exuberant as he selected the location and method. What do you think? Should I shove his face into the urinal? Or should I use the jet shower to spray his ass? Or should I just stuff him in a trash can? Lian Yu's face was cold. She spoke not a word. Luo Nan's matter of life or death wasn't her problem. But within this crisis was a subtle trap. Not only was she going to be taken advantage of, she will most likely have to face Xie Juanping's fury when this is all over. Whatever the case, it was all not worth it. The medium which carried the first-person view increased in speed. The scene trembled all the more violently, while Li Xuecheng's breathing became all the more urgent to her side. As Luo Nan turned a corner, several hired puppets turned and went as well. The puppet streaming in first-person view received a report on the surroundings. The stream of people began to thin out ahead. It was the opportune time to strike. Then let's choose option A, the urinal. No, I want something bigger. Li Xuecheng cackled with bizarre laughter. He eagerly ordered the first-person view puppet to get to the scene as soon as possible. As the perspective turned the corner, Li Xuecheng could instantly see just how sparse the number of people was. Now Li Xuecheng could see things much more clearly. His hired puppets had already congregated together. They swarmed into a bathroom. Li Xuecheng was a bit discontent. I'm docking their pay later. Can't this group of rough guys make things look a bit more natural? Without any delay, an urgent voice was transmitted through the communications device. That fellow jumped the window and ran. Old Swa tripped when he gave chase. He's stuck in the window. We still have some of our people outside. We've blocked him off. Oh crap. The scene had turned chaotic and unsalvageable in an instant. At first Li Xuecheng's face was rigid, but unsuppressible lines of laughter burst forth in the next moment. Man Zhao. Would there have been any meaning if we weren't dealing with a tricky bastard like this? Yep, isn't this plot quite entertaining? Unexpectedly, he wasn't urgent nor impatient. He ordered the first-person view puppet to walk out of the locker room building and to give chase by following the indicator on his communications device. Li Xuecheng was a fellow who was adept at using money. The campus thugs he hired were quite skilled in cornering people. Although he didn't know how Luo Nan discovered that something was fishy, a group of 5 third-year youths still managed to trap Luo Nan in a dark corner of the back of a building after 2 minutes of chasing. By the time the first-person view puppet drew close, the situation had nearly come to an end. Batons, switch-blades, tasers, and other light weapons were held in the hands of these campus thugs. Although one thug had collapsed, another thug charged forward with an arc of electricity from a stun gun to stab Luo Nan in the ribs. Luo Nan twitched as his body bent down. Li Xuecheng clapped his hands in great delight as he watched. But in the next moment he saw something he didn't expect. Luo Nan, who was about to be drowned by a flood people, raised his head inexplicably. Luo Nan's gaze actually fixed in his direction. The bearing was absolutely precise. It was as if Luo Nan was looking at him directly with nothing but air separating them. Before he could react, a thundering voice erupted in the ear of the first-person view puppet, and the thundering voice also equally exploded in Li Xuecheng's ear. "What the hell are y'all doing?" His body jolted as the first-person view suddenly enlarged with the grassy field in a flash. Then there was just pitch-black darkness. Chapter 20. Vestiges of a Wraith, Part 2 of 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The camera shot the Earth at close range, however the audio recording device and other equipment were still in operation. Only the sounds of fist meeting flesh, miserable shrieks in succession, and noisy chaos could be heard. In the end it seemed someone had chased the thugs away. Only then did the scene return back to tranquility. Li Xuecheng was mute for a moment. He recovered and saw that the first-person view puppet wouldn't be getting back up anytime soon. He tried calibrating the camera remotely. His mouth continued to mutter all the while. "I should have known to use a hovering type." The camera suddenly shook and the scene changed. The view cut through the building, the grass field, the sky, and also an intermittent image of a person. The rocking caused one's eyes to go dizzy. "Steady yourself." Li Xuecheng had rushed out the order with the assumption that the first-person view puppet had recovered. But soon he discovered that he was wrong. The figure was way too close to the rocking camera. The ice-cold gaze of an eye focused gradually into view. Was it familiar? F***ck me. Li Xuecheng smashed a heavy fist on the armrest. He finally understood the state of the current situation. Luo Nan was holding the unconscious first-person view puppet and was searching for clues right now. In addition, Luo Nan had quickly discovered the issue. The camera rocked slower and slower, while Luo Nan's face became clearer and clearer. Lian Yu's hand grew more and more painful. She opened her eyes and looked at Li Xuecheng, who was right beside her. He probably noticed that she was looking at him, for his ashen face made a slight adaptation. His mouth twitched before he finally squeezed out a smile. "It appears to be game over this time." This awkward self-mockery combined with Lian Yu's relatively obedient attitude allowed Li Xuecheng to recover a bit of confidence. His voice increased in volume. "It's as I said before. Does he know who's the instigator? Even if he does know it was me, can his claw reach out to me? Like I can even give him a greeting right now." Li Xuecheng was about to use the communications device in broadcast mode, but halfway through he saw Luo Nan's gaze seemingly looking straight at him. Li Xuecheng hesitated before he finally chuckled. He replied stubbornly. "That I can also just ignore him." He closed the projector upon speaking, refusing to receive the information coming from over there. He began to talk and gabble non-stop when faced with Lian Yu's gaze. "Jiayu. I've always understood since I was little that the resources behind power is formless, traceless, and omnipotent. This fellow was fortunate today to be able to get away from the campus thugs. But tomorrow, the ones he shall face will most likely be true gangsters. I still have many different methods of play aside from what you've seen today. His family members, his relatives and friends, each person is a viable line of attack. This is real life. It's not like those games with their botchy programming and plot influences. We can take our time to play." Li Xuecheng's speech became filled with more and more passion. Confidence filled his throat anew. But Lian Yu, who had been pulled into his embrace, only felt a rocking sensation inside. The speech left an intense sour taste that was frightening. Her organs were stewed and nibbled to have 1,000 sores and 100 holes by this time. This setback was already out of Li Xuecheng's mind, his mind turned more sexual instead. He hugged this charming and delicate doll, no longer increasing his strength. But wouldn't it be purely idiotic of him to believe that his wishes will be fulfilled? Intention sprouted in his mind. The temperature of his breathing increased to the next level. His lips moved to the boundary between Lian Yu's neck and collarbone. Lian Yu's mood suddenly plummeted to 0. She tried to break free, but she was firmly locked in place by Li Xuecheng. "Jiayu, Jiayu, Jiayu." The fuzzy syllables boiled from Li Shuecheng's throat. The temperature of his body was rising. Sky's Fury was a very nice place. He had many splendid conquests in this place. And today there would be another large victory. Bang bang bang. Someone had suddenly knocked on the car window with a decent amount of strength. This person's mood was clearly represented. F***CK. I still haven't come yet and you're knocking some **T now. Li Shuecheng was furious for some time. He was even more furious that the bodyguard in the surroundings wasn't able to obstruct a stranger. What if Luo Nan had come murderously over? Wouldn't he have to personally deal with the matter? He pressed a button to roll down the car window. He was just about to curse at this person, but what appeared outside the car window was Xie Juanping's ice-cold face. Li Shuecheng was struck dumb on the spot. Xie Juanping's gaze swept across the tangled bodies within the car. His lips twitched and smirked. Li Cheng. Let's have a chat. Li Shuecheng got out of the car absent-mindedly, while Lian Yu huddled and curled up in the car in a fetal position. It wasn't an accident that Xie Junping had come over, since Lian Yu was the one who had originally sent out a help message to him. But Xie Jinping's attitude, from his abandoning her yesterday morning to the sweeping glance just now, still made her heart slightly go cold. Dreadfully, this person was uncatchable. It seemed that right now, Li Shuecheng was quite the better option. But that warped appearance of his. While her mind was in a tangle, a muffled sound rang out from outside that was also accompanied by some cursing. These sounds rushed directly in her ear. Lian Yu leapt up to take a look at the situation outside of the car, and her eyes went wide in a flash. Xie Junping was sitting fallen on the ground, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. He was somewhat stunned. Li Shuecheng gasped for breath as he grinned with laughter. His boiling mood had probably caused him to rip the collar of his shirt to reveal a skinny chest. His breathing caused his chest to undulate up and down, and the accumulation of the red color of blood pervaded it. Ha! Ha! Xie Junping. I've always hated looking at you. You're just a fool who could only sell his face without a teleprompter. Upon speaking, Li Shuecheng walked over and delivered another kick. Xie Junping obviously wouldn't give him an easy time. Xie Junping blocked the kick and pulled hard in one direction, dragging Li Shuecheng to the ground. The two then wrestled as a lump of mass. The bodyguard finally caught up, but he was too stupefied to do anything. In the end it was Lian Yu who blurted. Hey! Separate them quickly. The scene turned even more chaotic, and Lian Yu felt an inexplicably familiar feeling with this scene. She recalled somewhat absent-minded for a moment before remembering the conflict between Luo Nan and Li Shuecheng during their detainment. It pretty much went like this. Her long slender fingers were in her hair, but she was unable to make heads or tails of the chaotic situation. In the end she could only ask the heavens in silence. Has this world gone mad? Right now, the chaotic situation within Acumen College had already settled down. Luo Nan raised his wristband. He tapped to confirm on the verification mail sent by the International Science Expedition Society. He should have completed this task 20 minutes ago, but he didn't have the leisure to until now. This was because he had a certain intense feeling that he was going to be ambushed from the moment he first entered Acumen College. It was as if there were many people who were watching him attentively with fixed eyes. At first Luo Nan believed that it was just a figment of his imagination. But this feeling grew stronger and stronger to the extent that he began to hear a low crackling rumble. He was very familiar with this sound. It was the sound of the visualized chained crow. The crow had entered reality on its own accord for some unknown reason. It was simply a reconstruction of a passage from the legendary novel, Divine Soldier's Warning. Luo Nan remained super alert because of this. After a few rounds of observation, he finally discovered that he was being watched by several people. He then took the opportunity to jump the window and run. How was he supposed to know that his enemy would bring out such a large force? They cornered him in the end. If it wasn't for the help of that ardent person with a heart of justice, even he wouldn't know how today's events would end up. Oh, why hasn't that ardent person been introduced yet? The situation was far too chaotic back then. Luo Nan could only remember that the person had a tall and sturdy figure. This person swept over like a gale of wind, chasing those campus thugs off in all directions. They ran and ran, leaving no trace behind. Acumen College was a place filled with strange people in great numbers. Luo Nan shook his head. He was unable to see anybody observing him in his surroundings. But that feeling still remained in his heart. He entered into his visualization state. It was becoming more and more effortless for him to enter into the fixed space. He saw that the crow with its long chains was exceptionally active within the center of the void. It spiraled and orbited inside and outside of the visualized diagram. But what was most interesting was the faint red glow at the front end of the chain. A fractured and twisted line was within the glow, forming an abstract symbol. It made Luo Nan have quite the feeling of familiarity. Its dark red luster was the best indication. Luo Nan was able to recall something within several seconds. Weren't those lines the same lines that showed up on the burning wraith's body when the wraith evoked a great mass of spores on the warship? When Luo Nan had first drawn the burning wraith, he had drawn many coinciding lines on the paper. But those lines weren't as concise as the abstraction right now. Chapter 21. One's True Colors, Part 1 of 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. A soft electronic bell rang in the distance. It was now 8 in the morning. The act of a new day began once more, revealing the morning scene of bustling inefficiency. Luo Nan waited a long time for the ardent person to come back, but he saw that several of the thugs who had been knocked silly to the ground were starting to recover their strength. He didn't want to fix this giant mess, so he just simply turned around and walked away. He didn't ask to see who was the person targeting him, partly because he didn't believe that these thugs really knew what was going on behind the scenes, and partly because he was able to form an approximate conclusion from looking at the needleless syringe and its special solution contained inside. The classroom teacher was lecturing within the classroom. Not a single word was heard by Luo Nan's ear. Instead, the notebook laid open in front of Luo Nan and the fluorescent pen was tracing the abstract symbol. He made use of the color matching function within the software to change the lines into a dark red color. There seemed to be no difference whatsoever between these lines and the lines within the fixed space. Luo Nan stared at the symbol drawn on his notebook. He automatically felt a corresponding response with the burning wraith. This symbol was quite the marvel. When Luo Nan tried to reconstruct the burning wraith's definite form anew from its core, he had an inexplicable feeling that any additional stroke would ruin it. It would be like drawing legs on a snake. How could a mere dozen or so entwined and coiling lines already describe all the characteristics of the burning wraith? The details were all fully packed. It was impossible for Luo Nan to even begin. He gripped the pen, wishing to draw but was unable to, causing his stifled heart to be uncomfortable. Then Luo Nan simply stopped seeking perfection. He sketched out lines in a casual and relaxed manner, and the pen moved freely with a mind of its own. All the while his mind was lost in thought, he was thinking of the reason for the abstract symbol's appearance. The burning wraith had been surrounded and annihilated on the warship. This was an undoubtable and undeniable fact. But this symbol that appeared on the chains within his visualization was truly real. Luo Nan deliberated over thoughts, but could only come up with a single reason. The heavily chained crow had analyzed and acquired the marvels of the burning wraith's core layer when the burning wraith was under its control. Even though the burning wraith had been annihilated, its core characteristics were left behind as vestiges upon the chain, giving the chain an additional ability. And so the warning that was issued due to the crisis this morning was not done by the heavily chained crow, but rather this symbol of the burning wraith. This was likely due to the burning wraith's extremely sensitive nature towards fear, savagery, and other negative emotions. Luo Nan had borrowed this property for his own use to become quite the special skill. Luo Nan could also feel the symbol's existence become a bit stronger than before now that the crisis was over. Even now the symbol seemed to continue to restore in strength. Could it be that the burning wraith could rely on this symbol to resurrect itself? Luo Nan's thoughts stirred in his mind. If things really were like this. Oh my, there would be nothing better. The combat strength of the burning wraith had already been fully revealed upon the warship. If he had this kind of bodyguard, why would he fear those campus thugs? He would just turn around and enter the professional society. He would have one more ace up his sleeve. He would feel much more relaxed. Was there a way to increase the recovery speed of the burning wraith? Oh! Luo Nan suddenly felt the tip of his pen go astray. He looked at his notebook and saw that the perfect abstract symbol had already been drawn to a mess. It looked like the burning wraith, but there was something completely wrong about it. But, it seemed like he could still draw some more. Unexpected thoughts and ideas like those of demons and ghosts sprouted in Luo Nan's mind. They combined with an inexplicable burst of inspiration to make Luo Nan suddenly interested. Luo Nan had been reducing his drawing most of the time. All the structures, lines, and shadow layouts were being simplified to leave behind and prominently display the most basic core characteristics of the source material. He could only recall of one instance when he made an addition to the drawing. That was when he made a breakthrough and implemented "My Heart's a Prison." He only had an abstract idea back then, the drawing had lacked the essence for a matching form. But details were padded out through unending bursts of inspiration, building a grand structure at the last moment and drawing out the heavily chained crow from within. The current situation was somewhat similar to yesterday's. He did not have as much insight, but as long as he had a clear idea on the general direction, he could still generate a considerable amount of relevant details and clues. Luo Nan continued to patch and repair here and there on the botched drawing. A certain image that had been hidden deep in his mind and had yet to be formed was now slowly becoming clearer and clearer. An indistinct structure finally appeared on the notebook. It was unexpectedly similar to the architecture of Acumen College's campus. The drawing was sloven and indistinct. Anybody who saw it would likely be completely baffled. They would just consider it to be a botched and incomplete drawing. But Luo Nan knew that this drawing was already completed. All his insights and known knowledge were already crammed inside, and the most important answer had also emerged from within. The outline of a character had finally formed in the core zone, in the location of the abstract symbol. It was a sheep in wolf's clothing. This fellow had exaggerated limbs and actions to conceal the fear it had in its heart. And there was more. Luo Nan stared concentrated at the drawing. There seemed to be a layer of flowing flames on the surface of the dark red lines. The illumination of the flames made him a bit dazzled. He had an estranged feeling similar to the time when his soul had left his body, when his mind and body were separated. However, being under this state made several of the indistinct information contained within the drawing become clear in an instant. L.RG The target was located approximately 3 kilometers away somewhere in the southwest direction on campus. The corresponding campus building would be the medical department. Luo Nan was in a daze while the clear and distinct information was gushing and leaping into his brain. Could it be that this was a psychic technique? It was simply like a journey within a dream. Various elements were gathered and pieced freely together, but a relatively clear solution was actually the end result. Anyway, he didn't know whether this was a real psychic ability, nor did he know how this technique operated. Oh yeah, the medical department. Luo Nan suddenly remembered that yesterday he had booked an appointment for a physical. The time was. Alrighty then. He had missed it. Nevertheless, recollection would always comes out as a string of memories. Luo Nan also recalled the time when he logged into the Secret Star forums yesterday. There was a netizen by the name of U.Soul who was also affected by the burning wraith. He said that he would bring his wife to the hospital for a physical. What sort of things were discovered? Luo Nan really wanted to gather all relevant information on the burning wraith. Since his flexible screen was ruined, he used his wristband to connect to the mini projector on the school's desk and to connect to the World Wide Web. He went to the Secret Star forums to look for news. When Luo Nan first logged in, he nearly didn't recognize the forums. The entire forum was filled with a grave and serious dark gray color. There were no other colors whatsoever. The central interface had turned into gloomy black hole horizon. Its topic was unconcluded investigations. A close martyr. Centralized grieving post for U.Soul. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment. He opened the post and heading the post was a news excerpt. The general idea was: a couple who resided in the RD district had gone to the hospital for a physical yesterday afternoon. Because of an escalated argument, the wife was suspected to have a psychosis break out. She lost her reasoning and stabbed her husband. It was a human tragedy. Below it was a rougher, darker, and heavier font. Warning. 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 The effects of the nightmare incident has exceeded our expectations. Everyone must be on alert to think of all possible methods to ascertain the cause. Luo Nan stared at this piece of news all the way until the end of class. Students moved and turned to create a loud clamor. They went separately to their next classes. Luo Nan stood up and left the classroom as well, but he wasn't heading to his next class. He was heading to the medical department located 3 kilometers away. However, he was suddenly hit with a small dizzy spell upon walking a short distance out of the classroom. Chapter 21. One's True Colors, Part 2 of 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Luo Nan pushed through the dizzy spell, standing fixed as the sky spun and the earth whirled. When he slowly recovered, he tested the movements of his hands and he also bent his fingers and toes. Sure enough, he discovered that the joints of some of his fingers and toes were aching and numb. Overall, he felt as if he had drank too much alcohol. The speed and responsiveness of his reactions had inexplicably dropped by a level. In addition, the state he had just been in, with its flickering spiritual glow and its burst of thoughtful insights, was no more. Now it was like there was a veil blinding his mind. His mind felt murky and he only wished to sleep. Luo Nan did not panic, he just sighed. It still happened. He was detained on the warship yesterday and only got out of there in this early morning. It was impossible for him to prepare his drugs so. Fine. Even if he did manage to go home, the current state of his drug reserves would have made things pointless anyway. And so, nearly 5 years of painstakingly maintaining the daily drug preparation task had finally come to a sudden end. The uncomfortable feeling was largely due to an operational anomaly of his nervous system. It could be considered a sort of drug withdrawal response. Luo Nan was mentally prepared for this ever since he had the problem with locating a drug distribution channel. He was vigilant yesterday when he sped up his metabolism. He just never expected that this issue would wait until now to break out after his times of crisis were over. Luo Nan hobbled a few steps forward. He didn't feel too bad. He forced himself to stay up, but he knew that his complexion was certainly grave and bad without even looking at a mirror. All right. Now he had a valid reason to go to the medical department. 20 minutes later. Luo Nan strolled slowly into the medical department. This was Acumen College's School of Medicine and also a rather famous comprehensive hospital of Xia City. It was open and was free of charge to the college students. Students just had to first reserve an appointment online before entering and have their identity verified. Luo Nan had booked the appointment with the hospital in a standard and simple fashion. He just chose the queue with the longest waiting time. Upon making his reservation, he paid no attention to the information provided on the reservation slip. He just strolled around in the hospital. He looked to be wandering aimlessly, but actually his senses regarding the target had already grown clear when he had first entered the main medical building. The target should be approximately 70 meters in the east wing. That should be the inpatient department. As Luo Nan drew closer and closer, he could even feel the target's heart and state of mind contain overflowing fear and discontent. He could even feel a certain warped, knotted, and broiling stream of random thoughts flow inside of him. The thoughts were like the unending sprinkling of seasoning upon a roasting steak. What made him think things in such a way? While his miraculous line of thought was skipping all over the place, the ground below his feet was slightly shaking. Soon the shaking became far more violent. Even the windows of the hospital were creaking now. Another one. Within the disturbance, patients, students, professors, and so on were like bustling ants. They rushed out from various buildings and crammed themselves in the central courtyard within a few minutes of time. The emergency exit routes of the hospital opened one by one to prepare for the evacuation of acute patients at any moment. And so it was an earthquake. The earthquake lasted for approximately 30 seconds, and was accompanied by 2 aftershocks as well. Then came silence once again. Cursing sprang up all around the courtyard. The monthly seismic activity made special public locations, such as the hospitals, to panic at the slightest disturbance. Every time there was an earthquake, people had to follow fixed procedures and evacuate. Medical treatments that were underway had to be terminated. This happened over and over, tormenting the citizens. It was considered unexpectedly lucky for no accidents to occur. Luo Nan walked a few steps within the stream of people, but suddenly he stopped. He felt something. The target that had originally been in the inpatient department was moving at high speeds and was moving in his direction. An electric transport cart came out from the inpatient department in the east wing several seconds later. The vehicle pushed through on the pedestrian paths. Upon the vehicle was a casually dressed youth and several buff male bodyguards. Luo Nan's line of sight locked fixed onto the youth's face. He recognized this person and was not the least bit surprised. Yes. It was the person he had hypnotized yesterday to suffocate into passing out. It was Li Xuecheng. At first glance there was nothing much to Li Xuecheng's appearance. His face had a few additional bruises and his spirits looked depressed. Yet he was extremely fretful. He jabbered non-stop to the bodyguards at his side. He spoke intensely and even smacked a bodyguard on the shoulder in anger, paying zero attention to the public context they were in. It made one feel that he was extremely neurotic. Obviously Li Xuecheng under this kind of state wouldn't notice his great enemy within the flow of people to the side. Luo Nan even heard his own name leak out from Li Xuecheng's babble. Sure enough. This person was his target. Luo Nan casted his line of sight over, but a strange change suddenly occurred before he could think of his next action. A glowing red mist suddenly soared up from Li Xuecheng's body and entwined with the interweaving shadows of the pedestrian walkways and buildings. It coiled and transformed before Luo Nan, ultimately forming a human-shaped demonic wraith. No one aside from Luo Nan was able to see this scene. Luo Nan's pupils shrank slightly and he stood there motionless on the spot. There was no one who was more familiar with this thing than Luo Nan. A burning wraith. Yet another burning wraith. So it turned out there was more than one burning wraith. But the most incomprehensible thing was that Luo Nan didn't feel shocked, alert, nervous, and so on in this instant. Instead he felt famine-ous. He could not suppress this feeling of hunger. It was a type of food that was quite ripe. A completed and cooked dish. It looked so delicious. It was time to eat one's fill. Crackle. Crackle. The heavily chained crow vibrated with its cry. Its sound was like a sharp needle that fiercely pricked Luo Nan in between the eyebrows. He was struck with a cold shiver. The scent. The hunger. It was all smashed to pieces in an instant. This completely new burning wraith in front of him radiated with a scorching strength on the mental plane that pressured against Luo Nan. Within it was clearly overflowing hunger and greed. The wraith flew as a gale towards Luo Nan, attacking. Luo Nan still remained motionless as he thought deeply. The intense instinct of greed from this burning wraith was declared clearly at him. At the same time as Luo Nan faced this imminent approaching threat, the crackling of the heavily chained crow superimposed upon itself above his mind. A strength came from the format of his body and mind through the means of a certain unending accumulation until the strength reached its utmost bound. The boundary between the real and the imaginary was torn apart in the next moment. The heavily chained crow surged forth and leapt out from the space between Luo Nan's eyebrows, throwing itself in a direct head-on collision with the burning wraith. And it entered the body of the burning wraith in an instant. Hum. The wretched cry only existed on the mental plane, but it did sound out in reality for a brief instant. The hundreds of doctors, nurses, students, and patients present were all dazzled for a split second. But soon this dim feeling vanished without a trace. This was due to the abstract symbol at the end of the crow's chain. It had flashed with a lustrous glow. The dark red glow illuminated the originally pitch black interior of the burning wraith, and the glow released a certain force as well. A rapidly revolving vortex mass was formed in an instant. The strength of the vortex was extremely large. This was also an instantaneous technique. This newly acquainted burning wraith was no longer able to reform. Most of its body had been sucked into the vortex and into the abstract symbol, increasing the brightness of the symbol. The small portion that remained floating in the void collapsed and dissipated to nothing. And at nearly the same time, bodyguards on the just encountered electric transport cart cried with alarm. Li Xuecheng, who had just been exploding with criticism, suddenly fainted in the vehicle. He was no longer conscious. A small disturbance was now occurring in the courtyard. A bodyguard carried Li Xuecheng off the cart and put him lying down on the grass lawn. Li Xuecheng's pupils were jumping all over and his mouth was frothing. His face was ashen like that of a dead person. Luo Nan turned around and saw what used to be Li Xuecheng's life force. It was as if the floodgates were opened. Large quantities of life force leaked out on the plain unseen by ordinary people, transforming into fine wisps of smoke that crumbled along with the burning wraith. They curled up into the vortex in the void. Luo Nan's eyebrows were locked tight. He stirred telepathically, withdrawing the chained crow. The dark red abstract symbol also entered the space between his eyebrows and the vortex in the void faded away. The leaking process of Li Xuecheng's life force was suddenly put to an end. However, Li Xuecheng had already sunk into a heavy coma. Luo Nan stared at the unconscious Li Xuecheng lying on the ground. Luo Nan's expression was very grave. A victory that came as easy as crushing dry leaves and smashing rotten wood did not give him the least bit of delight. Luo Nan diverted his gaze from Li Xuecheng's body a short time later, turning towards the crowd in the vicinity. Some people were watching with curiosity. Some people just casted a single glance and completely ignored what happened. There were also doctors and nurses rushing over. This was a hospital. What can't happen? Everyone could understand what had happened. But who knew that on a plane they could not touch, that there were formless wraiths running wild, corrupting the minds of people, breathing in their essence and energy. Luo Nan was a victim. Li Xuecheng was a victim. Perhaps the human tragedy with the Yu-Soul couple was a part of this. How many remained? Just how many demons were released with that one howl in the RD district? And, how many have formed schemes to seize away human life just like now? This was not only it. The burning wraiths clearly had a competitive existence between each other. A relationship to consume each other. They formed a faintly discernible food chain network. Luo Nan stared absent-mindedly in the noisy and clamorous courtyard. Is this still the world I know? Chapter 22. Information Meeting, Part. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 22. Information Meeting, Part 1/2. the Xia City branch's business office of the International Science Expedition Society was located in the Lilan district of Xia City at the 18-story-high Shangding Tri towers. They were located approximately 50 meters above the ground, which was also the limit of low-altitude public transportation. The lighting of the morning sun was quite beautiful. Anyway, the floors below 50 meters had fairly cheap rental prices. Subordinates of the society, the wilderness explorers, rented the entire lower 17 floors in one breath. They remodeled the floors to set up a more open and spacious area to provide the employees with space to move around. The common employees who worked for the society, the group of wilderness explorers, helped purely mental cases who had money to burn. With the remodeling money, the society was completely able to rent an exceptional place in the core central business district and remodel it into whatever they think of. And so they had spent a lot of effort in remodeling, however the vast majority of facilities still remained relatively empty. The most typical case would be the luxurious circular conference rooms that were created on the lowermost 3 floors. They could hold over 1,000 people to discuss business, but in the 10 years since their inception, the number of times they were used did not exceed 10. Today the conference room was opened once more at last. Several hundred people entered in one after another. It made the ordinarily idle and useless employees of the society watch with gaping eyes. There were this many wilderness explorers in Xia City. The employees could not see the organized materials for the meeting, so they did not know the inner details, how much time was reserved, and so on. They only felt that the meeting took an extremely long time. People entered in the morning, then lunch time passed and the meeting had yet to come to an end. Even when the earthquake happened during the middle of the meeting, there was no one who came out to flee from danger. Speaking of the earthquake, the white-collar workers working nearby discovered from the Earthquake Bureau's announcement that the number of earthquakes they felt seemed to be far higher than usual. 10 to 20 earthquakes happened at the very least. Though things were like this, the group of wilderness explorers continued to hold their meeting unperturbed. They really had guts. Year 2096, September 28, 14.00. Solar illumination simulation equipment were turned on all year round, casting dusky rays of light within the round conference room. Half of these installations were smashed broken, spreading extensive shadows all around. The shadows concealed the wretched state of the meeting and seeped deeply into the hearts of those attending. Zhang Yingying gripped Susan's plump hand lightly. The body temperature of the two linked together, causing the dusky chill to retreat a little. Susan muttered a few words that were incomprehensible to anyone. The wound atop her shoulder still ached. If the injury was just 2 centimeters higher, her carotid artery would have been torn. A podium was in the center of the parliament-style conference room. The president of Xia City's Wilderness Explorer branch, Ouyang Chen, stood there wearing a well-ironed suit, bow tie, and old-fashioned flat glasses. He looked like a refined scholar. Under the dusky halo of light, his face could be faintly discerned. He opened his mouth with tranquility. As of now, roll call is over. At first 429 people were gathered here today. Those who were ultimately able to participate in this information meeting numbered 420. 9 people were lost. They had been turned into corpses. And for some, not even corpses could be found. The atmosphere of the conference room had already froze solid. I will be informing the relevant state of the situation in this meeting. I have asked Quantum Corporation's CEO in charge of the Xia City region, Mr. Hu Yuli, to make a thorough illustration. Mr. Hu Yuli, who had once stirred up chaos in the world of business, was to the side of the podium. His complexion was ashen, but he strived to maintain an undisturbed appearance. He made a slight nod to everyone in his surroundings. This was all he could do. Ouyang Chen adjusted his glasses and began his formal speech. The projector behind him began to operate in sync with him, displaying the wretched state of the ruined zone within the RD district. First, here is a concise illustration. Quantum Corporation, the government, and the military were engaging in live research and analysis of mutants in the mutant laboratory in Xia City's RD district. Their project had been underway for 2 years as of now. Approximately half a month ago, Quantum Corporation switched to different test subjects, a type of special species. It was the rarely seen Darksider life form that had a parasitic relationship with a mutant species. Its codename was human.faced arachnid. The projector flickered through a great amount of pictures, all of which were relevant records preserved by the laboratory. Those participating in the meeting stared coldly at all the records. They continued to listen. Yesterday, aka September 27 at approximately 5:13, an operator employee at the laboratory came under the control of a Darksider life form. The operator forcefully destroyed the power generator, and before the backup generator could kick in, the Darksider life form spurred the mutant to try to escape from the laboratory. Quantum Corporation attempted to contain the situation. They killed the mutant at 5:19, separating the Darksider life form from its host. At 5:25, Quantum Corporation also killed the Darksider life form. But before the Darksider life form died, it used some sort of incomprehensible method we don't understand to release a certain virus. Yang Chen paused, then he repeated with emphasis. A virus. As of now, this is the best we can describe it. Taking Quantum Corporation's laboratory in the RD district as the heart of the incident, statistics show that the virus proliferated at a max range of 520 kilometers. This covers the entirety of Xia City and all of its surrounding satellite towns. A radius of 10 kilometers from the heart is the core area of the viral infection. The number of infected is the most here, with initial counts having a 70% infection rate primarily with the laboratory personnel and residents. The rate of infection rapidly drops outside the 10-kilometer range. According to initial research and statistics, we know of 3 characteristics of the virus. The first. Eliminating the core area from the equation, the rate of infection among the common masses is not that high, we have yet to discover a case. However, the situation is very bad for ability users. So far 9 out of 1,000 are infected. I believe that this is linked to the infection process. The responses and reactions of ability users are far more sensitive than that of ordinary people. The atmosphere of the conference room turned even more stifling. This 9 out of 1,000 rate of infection figure was calculated from human lives. Nearly half of all members of the society were able to participate today. And during the roll call just then, 4 people had been infected. And these 4 caused 5 other casualties. The second. There are many carriers, but the rate of the infection isn't that high. A special condition is needed to excite the virus. An intense change in one's state of mind, especially to a negative state of mind, is the most obvious trigger. The following is according to interior experiment reports of Quantum Corporation. The survival period of the virus in the human body is approximately 8 to 18 hours long. If one manages to maintain a tranquil state of mind in this time frame, the virus will be completely destroyed. But if there exists a negative state of mind, the survival period of the virus will be greatly extended. And there will be a high probability of its activation. Current data have yet to form a final conclusion. The third. As just witnessed by everyone, the activated virus absorbs the host's blood and energy to transform into a Darksider life form. And these Darksider life forms will try to consume and fuse with each other to endlessly strengthen themselves. The levels of their forms and strength grows closer to that of their releaser each time they strengthen. Yang Chen diverted from illustrating the state of affairs. He turned his head to face Hu Yuli. He stared with cold and clear eyes behind the flat eyeglasses. Therefore we need to ask. Is that human-faced arachnid really dead? If these Darksider life forms are able to absorb sufficient nutrients, consume and fuse with each other, wouldn't the result represent the rebirth of the human-faced arachnid? Has Quantum Corporation done research to support or touch on this situation? Hu Yuli could only shake his head. We still haven't performed thorough research yet, we really don't know. He did his best to avoid Ouyang Chen's question, but he was unable to make it past the ordeal. Ouyang Chen's question was just the opening for more. A voice soon sounded out within the conference room. The information you released about having drugs stolen, what's up with that? This totally contradicts the news you announced just now. Chapter 22. Information Meeting, Part 2 of 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Hu Yuli forced a smile across his face. Indeed, we did report it as a drug theft from the laboratory, but that was just a mess created by a staff member. We didn't recognize the seriousness of the situation at first. We placed importance on searching for drugs. Now the facts are clear that doing so was a complete mistake. So it really was fake. Off stage, Zhang Yingying had carelessly twisted her wound, causing her to grimace in pain. Anyway, she wasn't easily convinced of Quantum Corporation's excuse. Part of it was due to her trust in her own intelligence channels, and another part of it was due to her lack of confidence in how Quantum Corporation has been handling things all this time. She talked in a low voice with Susan. This fellow has been lofty and indifferent all along. He has burners and the deep blue platform at his disposal. He always loved to ignore us, but today he's kowtowing on the ground. He's certainly hiding something. Susan nodded her head, then she shook her head. Let's see how the president responds. Hu Yuli's explanation obviously wouldn't convince the crowd. Doubting words were repeatedly spoken off stage, causing this business big shot's head to sweat. He was gradually being overwhelmed. Ouyang Chen lightly knocked the podium with a gavel at this moment. His voice wasn't loud, yet it made the entire conference room rapidly quiet down. Everyone. Since we don't have faith in Quantum Corporation's explanation, let's not waste further time with this matter. Seek the answer on your own free time. Quantum Corporation wishes for our society to intervene with this matter, to help them deal with the issue with the virus spread. They should respond with the appropriate sincerity. Of course. Of course. Hu Yuli didn't care about what Ouyang Chen wanted. He would first make a promise for now, then talk more about it later. Ouyang Chen's eyes bore into the crowd. He spoke calmly. Mobilization of the society is not compulsory. A majority agreement among the society members is required to organize an operation. And so now I shall state a justification in support of mobilization. It's very simple. According to reliable information, this human-faced arachnid was the first live specimen that was sent from that gate. Some people in the crowd were stunned and had yet to recover. A gate, is it that gate? Hu Yuli's pupils unexpectedly enlarged in an instant. His body rushed to stand up straight, but right when his butt left his seat, Ouyang Chen swept a cold gaze over him. His sudden impulse was extinguished. He was paralyzed on the seat, unable to stand up anymore. And right at this moment, when the attendees finally had the crucial information sink in, a rumble suddenly sounded forth. People had directly leapt up and started to inquire loudly. Ouyang. Is the gate you're speaking of that one? Ouyang Chen adjusted his glasses once more. The source of the mutant species, the starting point of the new age. Thanks to Quantum Corporation, that which we've always doubted, that door whose existence had yet to be proven, has finally been locked on. Where is it? Where? We can determine that it lies in the southern central region of the Mariana Trench of the Pacific Ocean. The Society hopes that Quantum Corporation can provide concrete coordinates and data. Obviously, this would require us to engage in further discussion. Let's return to the main topic for now. Ouyang Chen's gaze swept in a circle, sweeping across each person's face. Among the seated are martial arts families, sorcerer bloodlines, clergymen and monks. In this new age, we together are known as the Awakened. Our strength has been increasing over the past 50 years, our abilities becoming more powerful. Our own efforts are a part of this, but there is also that which is hard to explain, the X factor. Why were the limits of power, which were originally difficult to surpass, released starting from the year 2059? How is it that we pulled away and created such a large disparity between us and ordinary people? Why did the powers and abilities of legend appear on ourselves one by one? What did we pay? What did we gain? Is what we paid unequal to what we gained? Do we truly dominate our own fates, or are there certain unknown gods controlling everything? We thirst to understand this secret. We demand to know the reason, but we are unable to find the answer all this time. And now what seemed to be a dead-end road suddenly had its obstacles swept away. This road is placed anew in front of us. I do not wish to miss this opportunity, and I think that everyone thinks the same. Rumbling and rolling noisy voices echoed within the conference room. Yet Ouyang Chen's words still remained smooth and calm. First, I will be naming this operation by the society with the codename Broken Net. The incorporeal demon has weaved an enormous net. It is trying to hunt for prey within this enormous metropolis. We need to cut it down. Yet now I shall refer to it as a road sign. We have spent several dozen years searching to no avail. It was only until the emergence of formatting theory did humanity pursue a new page in evolution. This is a theory for the ordinary person. We as awakened have lagged behind. This is unavoidably embarrassing. As awakened, we must increase our pace. We fundamentally should be leaders. We need to grasp firmly onto every opportunity and act as brave explorers. Then we will tell others what the road ahead is like, we shall tell which direction humanity should move towards. There is a road sign ahead of us right now. Glory will forever be in our hands. The electric vehicle reached its stop with a beep, waking Luo Nan from his sleep. When drug withdrawal reactions start, time wouldn't pass that easily. The damned elective-style school along with his earth-shaking course schedule caused Luo Nan to switch between 5 classrooms for 5 classes for his major, spanning across 4 different buildings. Over the course of the entire day, Luo Nan moved back and forth between the northern and southern part of campus. He didn't feel it was much back when his body was in a good state, but today's running back and forth made Luo Nan's head a muddled mess. He sat on the inner campus electric shuttle in a dazed half-asleep state. He slapped his cheeks to stimulate his consciousness, then he slowly got off from the vehicle. The time right now was 3:40 in the afternoon. It was also the time when societies were active. Luo Nan's destination was the Precision Electronics Interest Society. There were skillful experts from electronic manufacturing companies employed all year round over there. They were open for teaching maintenance and repair. It was also a paradise for DIY lovers. Luo Nan's goal was obviously to get his damaged flexible E.ink screen repaired. The damage to this intimate device gave him a feeling that was worse than the drug withdrawal response. However, he seemed to have spent all his luck on his divination drawing in the afternoon. The professional repair and maintenance teaching was already underway in the Precision Electronics Interest Society. They were thriving and flourishing. Today they employed certain super experts, repairers, and enthusiasts from the industry. The professional hall was packed to the brim. He squeezed through the crowd for 20 minutes, and only just now did he manage to get a reservation number. In the end, Luo Nan could not stand being packed in the flowing crowd of people within the hall. He ducked his way outside to breathe fresh air. However, the feeling of dizziness along with his excessively sensitive senses invaded his mind in this moment. The rays of the afternoon sun pierced through the canopy of trees along the road, falling onto the side of Luo Nan's face. For the first time in his life, he felt that the autumn sun was scorching hot. Half of his face felt like it was about to combust, he could even smell the charred fumes of flesh burning. This was without a doubt a hallucination. Luo Nan stayed to the side of the road, standing straight like a nail. His lips were faintly squirming as he chanted the 20-word mantra. The words flowed into his heart like a cold stream flowing down his throat. It took the messy thoughts that dazzled his mind and cleansed them, drowning them one by one. Things took a turn for the better just then. A shadow had streaked across his half-drooping eyes. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes, startling the person who waved their hand. That person retreated half a step, bringing an elbow down between the two. When the action was completed, that person figured out that their actions were excessive. Awkwardly laughing, the person spoke. "You all right there, fellow student?" Chapter 23. Frequently Booked, Part. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 23. Frequently Booked, Part 1/2. Actually, Luo Nan's vision was still fuzzy for 2 seconds after lifting his eyelids. When his vision totally recovered to be clear, all he saw was a wall. The person in front of Luo Nan was buff and tall, taller than Luo Nan by a full head. This person's back just happened to block the sun, covering Luo Nan's entire face by his shadow. This sudden sight truly did scare Luo Nan a bit. Luo Nan took a second look from a different angle. On top of this person's strong and muscular body was actually a rather simple and honest face. His face possessed the youth of a student, containing not even a few hairs of peach fuzz. And that wide mouth of laughter appearance of his was rather likable. Luo Nan did a brief recollection and realized that his own deathly face combined with his muttering had created a far too conspicuous image. That inquiring wave of a hand was certainly done out of good intentions. He responded with a smile as well. "It's nothing. Just a bit of a wandering mind back then." A wandering mind. The person ahead revealed an energetic smile on the spot that spoke, "Although you're stubborn, I'm also a guy, so I understand." Then he immediately introduced himself. "That's good that it's nothing. My name is Shuelei. I'm a 10th grader of the River Wu district." Luo Nan, also from the River Wu district. 10th grade. "Huh. You also live in the River Wu district?" "I live on Pear River Road. Where do you live?" "Blue Bay Community, I just moved there not too long ago." "That's not far away at all." "What a coincidence." Shuelei clapped his hands a few times with great laughter. "What a strange meeting. It must be fate." "Alright, just call me Leister." This one had to be following the code of chivalry. Luo Nan was suffocated for a moment from Shuelei's knightly manner of speech. It was unknown if Shuelei was doing it on purpose. Luo Nan was left speechless for some time. However, Shuelei's giant mouth was completely able to support the occasion all on its own. "I'll just call you Nanster then. Fate is fate after all. Actually, I had already walked past you back then. But I heard your breathing resonate. It seemed that you were buzzing with a chant. It was like a deep breathing technique, yet it was not. And when I saw your complexion, that appearance of yours, I was afraid you hit a setback while skill training." "Yep. It's great that it's nothing. It's great that it's nothing." When Luo Nan heard the words, deep breathing technique, skill training, and similar vocabulary, Luo Nan's mind stirred. He looked at Shuelei again, sizing him up. He noticed that Shuelei was wearing some odd clothes. They seemed to be training clothes from some sort of gym. They had a light gray color, and on the left chest was an emblem of a 3-legged cauldron. It gave people a deep impression. Shuelei noticed where Luo Nan's gaze was pointed at and puffed up his chest. "These are the training clothes of our gym. Not bad, eh?" "It was you." Luo Nan answered with a question. A certain memory had flipped to the surface from the depths of his mind. This tall and sturdy figure along with the gray jacket was familiar no matter how he looked. Shuelei was confused. "You know me." Luo Nan reminded him. "This morning. Outside the changing rooms in the South 2 area. It was you." Shuelei also recognized Luo Nan, but his response was stranger than Luo Nan's. He casted a glance behind him and only then did he speak in a low voice. You should be fine now, right? That group of people should be all scattered by now. Yes, sir. Many thanks for your helping hand and your sense of justice. Luo Nan also followed the code of chivalry and gave thanks in that style. Indeed, this was quite the coincidence. This tall and sturdy student in front of his eyes was the ardent person who helped him out this morning. This enormous campus could accommodate several 100,000 people. The probability of meeting this person again was really far too small. Ain't nothing, ain't nothing. I was just passing through and I was there at just the right time. Xue Lei was gesturing with his hands endlessly, but his face revealed excitement before he could finishing speaking a few words. Nanster. Although your body looks a bit weak, your hand strikes are quite nimble. The places you striked were tastefully chosen. Have you trained before? As Xue Lei spoke, he also gesticulated with movements. He nearly touched Luo Nan's body as he demonstrated. Luo Nan didn't know if he should block Xue Lei's move. But then a voice suddenly called from behind Xue Lei. Leister. What are you up to? Xue Lei's body froze as soon as he heard the voice. He withdrew his hand and prepared a smile. Then he turned around. Hey Xiaolin, there's a fellow student I know over here. A tall and skinny girl walked over to them several seconds later. She automatically hooked Xue Lei fixed by the arm, declaring their relationship publicly. The two matched quite well in height to say the least. Xue Lei introduced her promptly. This is my girlfriend Chen Xiaolin, she's a grade higher than us. And this is Luo Nan. He also lives in the River Wu district, he lives over in Blue Bay, right? Luo Nan nodded with a smile, he wasn't superfluous. Chen Xiaolin sported a pixie cut. Her jeans matched well with a simple white jacket. She looked to be a blunt person. The outlines of her face were extremely distinct. Her eyes were slightly slanted, giving her a somewhat astute and strict appearance. A single look made it clear who held the power between her and the simple-minded Xue Lei. However, Chen Xiaolin was extremely accommodating when it came to dealing with people. She greeted Luo Nan with giggles and laughter, addressing him as Junior. She held an unwavering attitude. Luo Nan saw that the two were paired like one and felt that he shouldn't bother them. He prepared to say goodbye, but he had to first express serious and heartfelt thanks for Xue Lei's favor of assistance. The matter from this morning that he had just started his sentence when Xue Lei bored at him with wild hinting eyes. Luo Nan was struck dumb, then he took a look at Chen Xiaolin wrinkling her brow to the side. He realized that there would be some interference, now wouldn't be the time to talk about this topic. He thought for a bit, and just straightforwardly reached out his hand. You guys get going then. Leister, let's add each other as friends. Is that all right? Of course, of course. Xue Lei chuckled as he reached out his hand, making contact with Luo Nan's wristband. Bzzz, bzzz, both of the wristbands vibrated at practically the same time when they had touched. The sound was quite surprising. Whoa! That was synchronized. Dang! Xue Lei cried in surprise. His voice died to a miserable groan in the end from Chen Xiaolin ferociously pinching his waist. Luo Nan confirmed that this was an important message that issued the notification vibration. He lifted his wrist to confirm. The sender was the special duty advisor of the 10th grade, Li Mingde. He wanted Luo Nan to be at his office at 5 o'clock. It probably had to do with him skipping class yesterday and missing exams. To the side, Xue Lei finally realized what the situation was. After verifying the information, he also gritted his teeth. Elder Mingde has summoned me. This news can't be good. Luo Nan raised his head to look at Xue Lei. You too. Xue Lei blinked his eyes. What? After a moment of shock, Xue Lei immediately realized something. He looked at Luo Nan once more. He spoke with brotherly meaning. You also didn't enter a society. Luo Nan immediately confirmed that the person in front of him had somewhat of a different conclusion. Xue Lei was already grumbling and complaining on his own by now. He spread his hand. I really wanted to enter a society, but when I went to look at the martial arts society and the fitness society, I saw that they were far lacking when compared to my gym. I had no interest at all. Oh right. You want to go over together. My meeting time is 5 o'clock. Xue Lei was delighted. Mine is 5 o'clock too. This is some great fate. Let's go together. Together. Next to them, Chen Xiaolin thought of something. She asked Luo Nan. You didn't enter a society. Then you're a new student that just entered the college. Luo Nan nodded his head in agreement. Chen Xiaolin's eyes lit up in an instant. Junior, what middle school did you go to? Is it Riverwu Experiment Middle School? The same as Leicester? No, I went to 6th Middle. Xia City's 6th Middle. How prestigious. But it's far away from the Riverwu district. I used to live in the Nade district. I just moved into the Riverwu district after I tested into Acumen College. The Nade district. That's a core district, right? Housing there is extremely expensive. It's alright. Luo Nan found it somewhat difficult to handle the questions over family property from Chen Xiaolin. He wished to back away from the subject. However, Chen Xiaolin had already smiled with a proposal. It's almost 4. The matter with Advisor Li is a bit far off and we won't be able to get anything done in this time frame. Why don't we find a beverage shop and chill for a bit before going over? Xue Lei naturally agreed. Luo Nan felt it wasn't proper to decline when he looked at Xue Lei, so he nodded his head in agreement. Chapter 23. Frequently Booked, Part February 2nd, you are listening at novelfull.audio. There was a campus shopping center close by. Their reputation for leisure, snacks, and drinks inside was not bad. Class was out for the day, but it was time for the society activities right now. The stream of people was a bit smaller than normal. Overall, things weren't as crowded and head-banging as the Precision Electronics Interest Society back then. Luo Nan was still feeling discomfort from his drug withdrawal. Cold drinks and the like were extremely stimulating foods. If he didn't have to drink, he wouldn't drink. Anyway, he understood that Chen Xiaolin had invited him to sit down and chat. Hopefully she didn't come here desiring to eat food. Sure enough, the service bot had just finished putting snacks on display. Chen Xiaolin then spoke to Xue Lei. This time Advisor Li called you over. I won't talk about the other things, but don't just talk without thinking about anything regarding societies. Don't spit out any promises or agreements in regards to taking up considerable commitments or work. It was apparent that Xue Lei was dumbfounded. What do you mean? Luo Nan knew that Chen Xiaolin's words were also directed at him. But now was not the time to be superfluous. He raised his head and listened seriously. Chen Xiaolin faced Xue Lei to better lay out her words. Of course, it's because I'm scared you'll be duped. School societies are extremely complex. The school. Teachers. Students. It's a three-sided game. Those who don't understand the situation clearly will easily suffer losses. She knew this was not convincing enough after speaking, so she directly went for the emotional route. In any case, I would never hurt you, right? Xue Lei could only nod. Chen Xiaolin turned to face Luo Nan. Junior. You must know yourself and know your enemy in every matter. Have a plan in place before taking action. Don't you agree? Luo Nan could only smile faintly. Chen Xiaolin immediately continued speaking. Junior, you've been attending this school for nearly a month. You should know by now that Acumen College is an experimental college. How everything's linked together, the atmosphere, and the practices are all somewhat different than that of other schools. Many people come here feeling unadjusted to some extent. This causes people to have an even greater need to help one another, to coordinate with each other. Really, I'm suggesting you to participate in the Mutual Assistance Gathering. Mutual Assistance Gathering. This student-organized gathering is meant for students like you and Shui who have half-entered the school. A mutual assistance organization was formed. Their goal is to get everyone to adapt to Acumen College's way of life and atmosphere as quickly as possible. There are many seniors in the organization who can impart their experiences and help resolve questions. Hick. Really? Luo Nan felt a bit awkward. He didn't really want to attend something like this. Chen Xiaolin was unexpectedly cordial. I won't mention anything else. Tonight is the annual mutual assistance dinner. Many seniors of the higher grades will be there. Some of them have already been here for 7 years and are about to graduate. They have extensive experiences. If you have no problems, just go and chat, you can expand your respective networks. If you do have problems, you can go and talk about them. They can help you answer many questions. This opportunity. Junior, you really shouldn't miss it. Luo Nan was shaking his head in his mind. He had been in torment for the past 2 days, all he wanted to do was go home and rest. How could he have the mood to participate in this sort of activity? Right when he was about to refuse, Luo Nan's wristband vibrated softly. His Precision Electronics Interest Society's reservation slip number had been called. Luo Nan sighed a breath and raised his wrist. Senior, it's my number now. Why don't we talk about the details on the activity on the way back? Think it over, Junior. The dinner is tonight at 7:00 p.m. It's at the Limestone Water Village pub. I'll send you a message on the way back with all the details. Chen Xiaolin was quite level when it came to dealing with people. She saw that Luo Nan wasn't too enthusiastic, so she didn't add any more words. She laughed as she exchanged numbers with Luo Nan, letting him free. Shui Lei reminded him in the end. Don't forget to go see Elder Mingda. Luo Nan tossed the matter of the mutual assistance gathering to the back of his mind. He rushed back to the Precision Electronics Interest Society. Soon his number was called. He followed the small and nimble floating guidance sphere and arrived in the maintenance and repair area. This place was much more peaceful than the large hall. Behind the maintenance stand he could see a few young students surrounding a middle-aged technician. They talked over topics and questions. When they saw Luo Nan enter, they checked to see the reservation list. External damage to a flexible E.ink screen. The repair costs will be high and there's no guarantee for a complete restore. It would be better to have a manufacturer swap it out. Luo Nan sat in front of the stand. He said in a low voice. It's a DIY installation. That one sentence made half the people glance over. The one who was looking at the reservation list laughed. That's super awesome to be able to create and install a flexible E.ink screen. Why aren't you fixing it yourself then? This screen looks to be 5 years old. You can upgrade it to higher specs. Luo Nan hesitated a moment before opening his mouth. That person has passed away. Dang. That's quite the pity. The middle-aged technician raised his head at this time. He looked to be quite the amiable person. He laughed. Then bring it here for a look. Let's throw any good ideas out there and see what we can do. Thank that you, teacher. Luo Nan nodded his head in thanks. He took the flexible E.ink screen out of the notebook and handed it over to behind the maintenance stand. The middle-aged technician's eyes lit up as soon as he looked at it. A Medusa board. This is hard to get started with. There's no wasted space between the modules. Are the internals displaced? Disassemble. Get to it, Zhai Gong. The students were bustling around. Zhai Gong didn't refuse. In the end, students who have yet to graduate wouldn't be prepared to deal with the highly integrated electronics installation that is the flexible E.ink screen. The flexible E.ink screen that had a thickness of approximately 0.2 mm was disassembled. It definitely needed delicate and patient handiwork, and Zhai Gong's gentle temperament was quite suitable for that. He explained the essentials and difficulties of the disassembly as he disassembled, explaining the complicated matter in an easy way to understand. Even Luo Nan, who felt that it was all Greek, had some basic concept after listening. But as the disassembly pace grew deeper, Zhai Gong gradually stopped speaking. His expression turned worse and worse. It wasn't just him. Some students were able to see that something was wrong. They began to whisper. Zhai Gong really did have patience. He spent a whole half an hour to disassemble the flexible E.ink screen into 2 pieces before stopping, fully revealing the interiors for all to see. Now the work desk's sensing equipment automatically scanned the state of each and every component of the screen. The instrument displayed all sorts of data as buzzing sounds of discussion rang out. Finally, the very first student who had looked at the reservation list was unable to stop himself from facing Luo Nan. "Hey mate. You didn't bring this broken thing to humiliate us on purpose, right?" Luo Nan was stunned. He completely didn't understand this person's meaning. "Your Medusa screen. It's not that thing's moved around, nothing's there, fine. It has an added battery module. But the processor, memory module, signal I/O module, sensors. It lacks all of them completely. Do you just use this as a mirror most of the time? That's impossible." Although Luo Nan was an electronics newbie, even he knew that the flexible screen would just be purely decoration without a processor, memory module, and so on. It wouldn't even function as a mirror. Obviously this was impossible. He had used it perfectly fine yesterday. He used all sorts of software without any problems. He even sketched 2 drawings. How could it be useless? The problem was, did this student in front of him and did this technician expert Zhai Gong have a need to trick him? And the sensor results were also displayed clearly. There was no way to pass it off as fake. After being faced with the illumination of several dozen ill-willed eyes, Luo Nan was truly at a loss. "You guys make way." Zhai Gong hadn't opened his mouth until now. He suddenly indicated to several of the students in front of the stand to make way. When the work desk was cleared of people, he controlled the mechanical hand to open the back of the Medusa screen. He worked carefully and cautiously. Several seconds later, a long thread like a spider's silk was slowly drawn from the complicated electric circuit. It swayed faintly amidst the breathing of the surrounding people. Chapter 24. Lightning Fiber, Part 1 of 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Actually the thread wasn't that long. It was approximately 7-8 centimeters in length. But it naturally felt different from the delicate electronic circuit in comparison. The students' attention were naturally drawn over due to the extraction of the long thread. Someone asked. "What's that?" "Metallic properties. It appears to have decent toughness." "How was this mixed inside? Was it there in the first place?" Zhai Gong did not give an answer to the aforementioned questions. As he looked at the object, he also looked at the state of the scanning tool. A moment passed before he directly put on a thin pair of membrane gloves. He pinched the long thread in his fingers, weighing it a bit before speaking. "The mass is strange. There's quite the downward force." Upon speaking, Zhai Gong prepared to place the long thread onto a digital scale. The students all gathered around in curiosity. "Wait a moment." Luo Nan suddenly spoke out, causing everyone's gazes to fall onto his face. Luo Nan spoke with a downcast head. "I'm sorry. I don't want it repaired anymore." His words prodded the hornet's nest. The group of society member by the repair stand spoke irritated. "You did this on purpose then? Damn. You really came to cause trouble. What grade are you? The case is already removed. What are you playing at? Do you think we at Precision Electronics are easy targets? Luo Nan's expression did not change. He repeated his prior words. I'm sorry. I've decided not to get it repaired. On one side was boiling emotions. On the other was a stubborn attitude. The two sides collided against each other. Things were becoming more and more intense. After a moment of startlement, Zhaigong actually smoothed things over. If he doesn't want it fixed, then we won't fix it. In the end, it's not our stuff. I believe that this student wouldn't go so far as to make fun of us. Anyway, the labor costs will certainly be paid right. Zhaigong had intended to smooth things over with a bad joke, but no one laughed. On the other hand, Luo Nan was wholeheartedly thankful. He bowed once more. Thank you, Zhaigong. I'm sorry for today. Zhaigong laughed in great delight. He did his best to calm the surrounding society members. Alrighty. I'll first restore the device back to normal. It won't take too much time. Anyway, there's some tricks to this. Y'all should pay attention. Luo Nan really admired Zhaigong for demonstrating this much concern. Yet he had no choice but to remind Zhaigong of something. Zhaigong. That thread. Zhaigong immediately understood. He spoke chuckling. In truth, I really had forgotten where I placed that toy. He took a small sealing membrane bag from the side and placed the long thread inside. Then he handed it over to Luo Nan. Luo Nan already lost count how many times he gave thanks. He reached out and retrieved the bag carefully and cautiously. A dozen cold eyes fell on his body. It was without a doubt that he had turned into the most unwelcome person of the Precision Electronics Interest Society. Luo Nan didn't care about this at all. He only had that fine thread in his mind at this very moment. Luo Nan walked out of the society hall 10 minutes later. He held the notebook in one hand and he held the sealed bag in the other. He was somewhat puzzled. It wasn't clear which side was heavier. The rays from the sun gradually fell from the west onto his body. It felt warm and comfortable, like a light warm breeze brushing past. Thinking for a bit, Luo Nan lifted his hands to let the sun's rays illuminate the sealed membrane bag. He squinted his eyes. Something seemed off. He probably got hurt from the bright circulation of light from lightning. The lightning originated from the long thread. Obviously, things could be explained as such. The thread existed within a bolt of bright blazing lightning. But there was no one at all in the surroundings who had a change in behavior in regards to this. Those who did notice things over here, only noticed due to Luo Nan's unfathomable posture. This bolt of lightning was like the burning wraith. It was also like the glowing cloud band that coiled around Zhang Yingying's body. It only revealed itself on the mysterious and unobservable plane. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to see it nor hear it. They wouldn't know of it or be able to observe it. This splendid light, this burning dazzling sight only existed in Luo Nan's eyes. Luo Nan lowered his arm and his 5 fingers gripped tightly, nearly ripping the bag. The more Luo Nan gripped, the more he experienced the marvelous qualities of the long thread. It was completely disharmonious with its fine and delicate shape. Such a marvelous object had been concealed within the flexible e.ink screen all this time, providing no knowledge of its existence. It provided no hints whatsoever, just like its last master. And so this inconceivable thing had its origins from that coward. Did he make it? Or did he obtain it through some channel? Why did he hide it in the flexible e.ink screen and send it back? Why were there no hints at all? That coward, what kind of plan is he playing at in the end? Luo Nan's brain was a complete mess. His mind was perturbed. As a foot went out to take a step, he suddenly felt his knee weaken. He actually lost his balance and suddenly fell headfirst. Oh dear. You're all right, right? Right when he was about to fall, it was Shuelei who caught up to him from behind and supported him up. Puzzlement and worry could both be seen on Shuelei's face. What's wrong? I was just yelling for you, but you didn't respond at all. What setback did you hit? Only now did Luo Nan remember that Shuelei was still waiting for him so that they could go to their great advisor's place together. What time is it? 4:50. It's that late. Luo Nan was shocked at first, then he remembered that he had been situated in the repair center for at least 40 minutes. Wasn't he cutting things close? Fortunately Shuelei has kept waiting for him stubbornly all this time. Then let's move quickly. Luo Nan took the sealed bag with the long thread and stuffed it in the cover layer of his notebook for a temporary placement. He needed to calm his head down for a moment and organize his thoughts. Shuelei had long since been hopping mad with anxiety. But when he saw the state of Luo Nan's body, his heart naturally shifted directions. I'm saying, Nanster, that your body and bones are a bit weak. You normally don't work out much, right? In my opinion, you should come to our gym and train for a few months. You will absolutely experience a major change. Luo Nan stopped at the campus electric shuttle, pulling Shuelei onto the vehicle. At the same time he inputted the shortest route to get to the great advisor's office in his wristband. Then his lips spoke without thinking. When I have time. Then it's settled. Luo Nan suddenly understood why Shuelei and Chen Xiaolin were a couple. The appropriate route was planned. With a bit of luck, Luo Nan and Shuelei would practically enter the great advisor's office at right on the dot. The number of new entered students in the school was not much. Those who had yet to enter a society by the end of the month numbered even fewer. However, there were still a dozen or so people, making the office crammed and packed. Luo Nan and Shuelei were the last to enter. Originally they wanted to hide themselves within the crowd, but Shuelei's large frame was too conspicuous within the group of 15 to 16-year-olds. It was even enough to bring Luo Nan into this. The last ones to arrive. Come to the front. The great advisor Li Mingde, also known as Elder, was nearly 70 years old. He was pretty much at retirement age. He maintained his physique quite well. He was tall and skinny with a sage-like appearance. He normally didn't talk or laugh much and looked to be hard to get close to. This was concrete proof that this person was truly hard to deal with. The crowd was subtly disturbed. Luo Nan and Shuelei were helplessly served as targets. They squeezed their way to the front row. Li Mingde used a strict gaze to cut through Luo Nan and Shuelei's face. Then he cut his gaze through the others. This was an example by punishment, like killing a chicken to warn a monkey. It was very effective. Some students who had been a bit rowdy braced their bodies one by one. They adopted obedient attitudes. Due to the elective-style courses, there were no set head teachers for the 7th year and above at Acumen College. Instead, there was a special advisor arranged for each grade to be responsible for and to handle the daily lives and psychological needs of the students. This format appeared to be quite trendy, but quite a few advisors were running the role of being a disciplinary directory in the actual implementation. They were in charge of disciplining, in evaluation, and so on. Li Mingde was a model representation of that. Just like in a class, this person first did roll call to verify that everyone was present. Only then did he start admonishing the students. What did I clearly call you all over here for? All the students were silent. Not a person spoke a sound. Chapter 24. Lightning Fiber, Part 2 of 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Mingde's face darkened. Do you know how important the society activities of Acumen College are? It's understandable that you all didn't realize it before, but on the 24th was the society promotional event. Can you still say that you don't understand? During the event, I asked that you all must put an importance on seeking a society you admire as fast as possible. Apply and enter to avoid being punished by having course credit removed. So many days have passed and most of the 100 people who had participated in the event already have results. But what about all of you? He pounded his table. Then a sensor activated a simple AR installation that displayed a profile. Shuelei entered the traditional martial arts society on the 25th, then resigned. Their skills were too crude. Shuelei tried to explain, but he was met with a fierce glare from Li Mingde. Luo Nan casted a glance and felt deep admiration for Shuelei. Then it came to be his turn. And there's also you, Luo Nan. You said you would participate in the interviews for the Mystic Arts Research Society on the 27th, but you didn't go. You skipped classes for the whole day on that day. Luo Nan opened his lips. He wanted to explain, but he closed his mouth in the end. He just stood there silently. Li Mingde pointed out the failings of all the other people, of their empty society experiences. He sneered in the end. You guys are quite easygoing. I explained during the society promotional event that the society series of school credit requirements take up a total of 24 units in 3 years according to the school provisions. Each year you get 8 units for participating. If you don't participate, you lose 8 units. Forget it then. How many courses do you guys have to do to make up this gap? This was the most realistic question from his speech aimed at this crowd of people. After all, a typical main course in a school year would only offer 4 units of school credit. Missing 2 main courses was sufficient to wipe practically a year's worth of effort. The office room immediately turned into an uproar of restlessness. It seemed that the school was serious. This was far different than the schools they were in before. And at this moment, Li Mingde made another heavy attack. September 30th is the final cut-off date for entering into a society. Today is the 28th. You think there's still time, right? But I need to remind all of you that tomorrow is the weekend break. The overwhelming majority of societies won't be open to accept new society members. A mass of people lowered their heads to look at the time, then their expressions turned ashen. The end of society activities was at 6 o'clock, yet it was already 5:20 right now. In other words, they had not got even 40 minutes to go look for a society, apply for membership, handle procedures even if they were to turn around and leave now, and this is only if the society accepts them. There were people who screeched at once. Aren't we screwed? Shuelei and Luo Nan glanced at each other. They realized the situation was extremely similar to that mentioned by Qin Xiaolin. They then lowered their heads to play dead. Seeing the group of people being lifeless or having expressions of being violently disturbed, Li Mingde waved his hand. The school is a good school. I am also a good advisor. We've already fulfilled our duties of informing you. But the freedom of choice you made was to undertake personal consequences. Fine then. Time is of the essence. Do your best to seize the time to save your school credit. Oi oi oi. What was he playing at? Shuelei was the type to resign from a society. Luo Nan had a special situation in not attending an interview. The vast majority of the others had introverted personalities. It was because of this that they dilly-dallied until the last moment when it came to selecting societies. They were indecisive. Also, these were inexperienced 15-16-year-olds. They were scared out of their wits early on from a few rounds of bombarding words. What freedom of choice did they have? The group of people looked at each other, not one daring to move. The students who lacked in guts were already on the verge of crying. Luo Nan and Shuelei originally wanted to withdraw back, but now they found it too awkward to move. Things continued like this until someone with a bit of a flexible brain opened his mouth with a stammer. Then advisorly, things are already this far along. It's too late whether we rush for it or take our time. Can the school make some sort of arrangements? The school won't meddle with the freedom of choice of students. Li Mingde continued to emphasize the wording, freedom of choice, loving to ignore them. The youthful students began to worry. They began to speak without thinking. But you're the advisor. When a student has difficulties, shouldn't you help handle them? You ignorant children. This time you'll listen to me. Though Li Mingde spoke as such, his grave expression somewhat softened a bit. He leaned back in his chair and muttered to himself for a moment. How about this? I'll give you all a proposal. Just a proposal. It didn't matter what would spew from Li Mingde's mouth. The anxiety-ridden students would all listen. A proposal is fine. A proposal is fine. Once one person would take the lead, several other people would follow. The office room soon turned into a chaotic rumble. Li Mingde shook his head. He extended his finger towards the crowd of students. In fact, I have some words. The difficulties are more realistic than you expect this time. Don't even think of the societies with great reputation and good resources. Your individual interests also need to take a back seat. Your goal now is to enter into a society. First, guarantee yourself a place to stay at. The crowd of students somewhat came to. They suddenly realized the rationality behind those words and said, "That's true. That's true. Then you can only select the more obscure societies, the ones with lower popularity. These societies possess limits with the scope of their activities and resources. You all probably just skimmed through their information before, but now you have no choice this time." Li Mingde sighed a breath. Frankly speaking, saving your school units and guaranteeing your learning quality is of number one importance. This is my proposal and you all have heard it. Now then, go and handle things at Godspeed. A dozen or so young students looked at each other in dismay. They heard the logic behind Li Mingde's words, but those words were also unavoidably vague and generalized. Li Mingde saw that most of the people had idle expressions and couldn't help laughing. I've already spoken to this juncture. What else are you all to do? Do you feel that you don't have enough time? If that's the case, I'll open a back door for you. If you feel that half an hour is not enough to choose, then I'll add an extra night. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning. Contact me with your decision then. I'll try to make contact with those societies and arrange a reply or an interview for you. I can't give any more time. Things won't be able to be arranged later than that time. And, I won't be able to guarantee the success. Of course, it was good to have an extra night to consider things, but the problem was that things were not guaranteed. Some people revealed bitter expressions. Advisor. There are over 4,000 societies in the school. Can you narrow down the scope of them or something? You think this is the final exams? Li Mingde gave a sweeping glaring glance. Then he pondered for a moment before pounding against the desk once more. The AI business system switched to a different interface in accordance to his allocated conditions. It displayed a stream of society names, 34 of them to be exact. I've just searched in the administrative system. You guys can refer to it. The flock of people squeezed their way forward. But Shui Lei at the very front gave a laugh when he swept his eyes across the information. Art of Growing Carnivorous Plants Interest Society. Obscure Female Poetry Psychological Research Society. Telepathy with Higher Lifeforms in Nebula M31 Society. What the F*** CK? Luo Nan didn't join the fun. He was being squeezed dizzy by the other people. He braced himself against the advancing flock of people, retreating in their opposite direction to hide temporarily in peace. The matter with school units and societies was admittedly important, but right now the majority of his brain consisted of the stirring of that lightning fiber. He unconsciously took out the sealed bag and stared at it lost in thought. And at this time he saw that the lightning fiber had already pierced a small hole in the sealed bag. Half of it was already exposed outside. It appeared to be sharper than he imagined. The material properties are indeed special. But how could the issue lie in its material properties? Luo Nan pinched the long thread in his hand. Then in the next moment he was stupefied. This was the first time he touched the long thread bare. The long thread had an exceptionally tender sensation to it. But Luo Nan also felt an incomprehensible temperature seeping into him. He savored it for a moment. It was not cold, yet not hot. Instead seemed the tingly energy of an electric current had channeled into him through his fingertips, proliferating throughout his entire body in an instant. His body didn't really do anything, but the long thread floating in the light breeze within the room suddenly stiffened straight. Its toughness was 100% of that of a sharp needle. It vibrated back and forth. Luo Nan stared with a stunned eye, not understanding the principle behind it. But during his moment of puzzlement and confusion, his wristband vibrated. A call was coming through. He was going to extend his hand to answer, but he had forgotten about the vibrating long thread in his hand. His hand moved forward and the long thread fell directly forward to touch the side of the wristband. Unexpectedly, not a single noise was made. The thread pierced directly inside. 7-8 centimeters of length, practically half the total length had entered inside. And at this moment, Luo Nan's hand had an electric current run through it. His fingers felt numb and he was unable to hold on to the thread any longer. His eyes stared blankly at the remaining length of the thread boring its way inside. It seemed alive, and it disappeared in the blink of an eye.